In this video clip, I am going to show you how to use the PC&P toolbar in conjunction with Photoshop to create either composite image or animation for shadow studies. And what you're looking at is a model that I pulled from OpenStreetMap. I extruded all the footprints to an arbitrary height, and some of you might notice that this is indeed Washington, D.C. So to geolocate our model, we need to find the Earth anchor point, or define the Earth anchor point for the Rhino model. And to do that, we need to find a identifiable place as an anchor. I think this building is pretty easy to find on the map, and we can use the lower left corner as the anchor. And here on Google Map, I think that's the building, and this is the corner. If you click on it, you will be able to get a latitude and longitude number. We will use that. So type in Earth anchor point in Rhino, and then it will let you input the latitude and longitude numbers. Remember to carry the negative sign before the longitude number. That will tell Rhino that it's in the Western Hemisphere. And then hit enter. It will let you choose the point. Let's snap to the corner of the geometry, and then it will let you input the north and then the east to orient the model. And as the last step, make sure that your sun settings has the correct time zone. Earth anchor point settings doesn't change time zones. So the time zone is correct. Now our model is geolocated. And before we move on to shadow studies, let's quickly go through how you can get location or coordinate information in and out of Rhino. And to do that within PC&P, there's the component Earth anchor point to extract the information, and then we can use a get coordinate component to translate the points in Rhino into real world latitude and longitude. So we can put those points into the location input and then use index 6 to get the actual Earth anchor point. Pass that along into the P input. You can see the component returns the true world coordinates of those point locations. And if you are working the other way around, say if you have a spreadsheet list of world coordinates and we need to find those points in the Rhino model, you need the geolocate component, which takes in the longitude and latitude. And similarly, taking the Earth anchor point as a third input, and as you can see, those points are reconstructed in our Rhino model. So enough for that segue. Let's move into our main course, which is doing shadow studies. First of all, let's change to a display mode where we can actually see the shadows. And then you can see if I change the time of the day on the sun settings, you can see the sweeping shadow of those buildings. And of course, we need to export it to deliverables. So let's use the shadow screenshot component in PC&P. And what it takes is a list of timestamps, which you can easily get from the sun vector component. We can use a range for the month and then a range for the hour. For this particular instance, for example, let's say 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Push that into the hour range, and then the default date 21st of the month is fine. Default time interval is fine, and that was the folder that it will export to. Click dump. You can see it will open up the directory for you with all the pictures exported, and just to see what it's like, nicely aligned. And then the image file is named after the timestamp. Pretty convenient. So let's go to Photoshop and import those images by using the script load files into stack. This will conveniently put each frame onto a separate layer. Go ahead and let that process. Okay. Now we're going to have to isolate the shaded areas in order to do the composite image of all the shadows. So we can use the action function of Photoshop, let's record it as shadow study SS. Let's uncheck that first and then hide all the layers that I'm not extracting shadows from. And now we can click record and go to select by color range. This way you can pick the shaded area, and then it will automatically select all the same colors. And then if you give it a fuzziness, you can also select the ones that is sort of shaded, like the ones on the buildings. The shadows on the buildings are a lighter shade of gray, but in this case it can also be selected as a transparency. So we can then assign the solid color to the selection just so it's distinct from the rest of the image. I think once I'm happy with the color, you can see both actions were recorded, and we need to do this on all the other layers to extract or isolate the shadow areas on each layer. I don't need that extra step recorded there, so delete that. I think it looks good. We can go ahead and apply that action to all of the layers. It's a pretty streamlined process. And afterwards, we can select all the shadow layers, which is the blue, and then of course display all of those and give it a transparency so that you can see the actual overlay effect, which is necessary for a composite. And to get the base canvas, we need to go to a view where there's no shadows, and then use the same component, maybe just this one time stamp, just one instance, and then do a export, and it will export that same image that can be perfectly aligned with the rest of our shadows. Make sure it's positioned correctly, rasterize first, and then push it all the way down to the last layer so the shadows are on top. Of course, you can play around with the transparency to see the effects of the composite. So with the frames ready, we can also export animations. And to do that, we go back to Photoshop and use the create frame animation function. And here you can make frames from layers. It will load up each layer onto a frame. This is in reverse, so let's revert it back to the correct order, which is from the morning to the afternoon. It's playing pretty fast, so let's assign a duration on each frame. 0.2. Maybe that will work. I'd like it to be a little bit smoother, so maybe change it to 0.1 second as the duration. I think this is looking pretty good. We are ready to export the GIF, which to do that we need to go to a save for one more thing. Let's make sure that is actually looping, and then the last frame, let's set it to a longer time period so that we have a nice little pause at the very end of the loop. So now we're ready. Go to save for web, maybe change it to a smaller resolution just because it's a GIF, then save. I'm putting it at the right place, the same place that all the other frames are. And in order to see the animation play, I think we need to preview it in something like an Internet Explorer, which is right here. So that's how you use the PC&P toolbar to make shadow studies.